The Sculptures book has been updated to version 5 and is compatible with 1.21.4. Sculptures allows you to create complicated displays for your survival worlds, similar to what you are presently seeing by using display entities. There are 3 types of display entities: block, which can render almost every block in the game; item, which can render all items in the game; and text, which can render letters and words. And sentences, probably. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to install this datapack to your world and how to use the book itself. So, let's get to it. First and foremost, let's install this datapack into our world. You will need access to the datapack's folder of the world and need to be able to run commands. We're going to download the zip file from Planet Minecraft. Link will be in the description below. Drag the zip file into the datapack's folder of our world, and if everything is set up correctly, you should be able to use the reload command, followed by /function sculptures:install. This will create all the necessary data and scoreboards for the datapack to function. If this function does not appear, something has gone horribly wrong. Good luck! If the function did not appear, use the /datapack_list command to make sure the datapack shows up in the list. If it does and it shows up as available but not enabled, you'll need to use /datapack_enable and then in quotes file /sculpturesv5.zip. If it does not show up in the list, sorry, not sure what happened, good luck. If you want to stop the datapack and remove all the data and scoreboards, you can use the function sculptures:"uninstall. To make sure everything has gone correctly, take a book and quill, write some random garbage on page 1, sign the book and name it Sculptures. This will automatically swap the book out for the Sculptures book. If you have a previous version of the Sculptures book, it should also update to the latest version when put in the inventory. The book also comes with several config options that can only be changed through scoreboard commands. There is max pivot, max scale, min scale, and use up item. Max pivot determines how far away the pivot point can be on a display. Max scale determines how big a display can be scaled up. Min scale determines how small a display can be scaled down, and use up item determines if items will be removed from your inventory when creating a display. To change these configs, you can use the /scoreboard players set followed by the pound, number, or hashtag symbol, whatever the heck you want to call it, the name of the config property, for example, max pivot, max scale, min scale, or use up item, followed by sculptures.config and the value you wish to set it to. Max pivot, max scale, and min scale can be any number you would like it to be. Use up item can be a 1 or a 0. 1 meaning it should use up items, 0 meaning it should not. Page 1 of the book is the table of contents and is pretty self-explanatory. Clicking on one of the items in the list will navigate you directly to the desired page. For example, clicking on Transformation will take you to the Transformation page, and clicking on Lighting will take you to the Lighting page. Under normal circumstances, when you open the book, it will always open at the Table of Contents page. However, when you put the book in a lectern, it will save whatever page you left off on. Because of this, at the top left of each page is an arrow you can click to take you back to the Table of Contents quickly. From top to bottom in the Table of Contents, we have Utility, a page dedicated to the core functions of the datapack, such as switching display modes, adding and removing displays, as well as locking and unlocking displays. Transformation, a page dedicated to changing the transformation properties of our targeted display. This includes their position, pivot, rotation, and scale. Lighting, a page dedicated to changing a display's brightness, its shadow properties, and giving displays a glowing outline. Copy/paste, a page dedicated to copying properties of a display to paste onto another. Then we have block display, item display, and text display. These are all pages dedicated to configuring properties of a specific type of display. Miscellaneous, a catch-all page for things that don't have their own dedicated page. And finally, the credits page, a page dedicated to showing who made the datapack as well as helpers. The first 3 options on the utility page are block, item, and text. Selecting one of these will change what display mode you are using. If you are in block mode, you will only be able to interact with block displays. Item mode will only allow you to interact with item displays, and text mode will only allow you to interact with text displays. The next option listed is Add. Selecting this will add a display based on whatever item you're holding in your offhand. If you are in block mode, you will be able to add almost any block as a display. Certain ones are unavailable as they have additional data that does not get added to display entities. For example, shulker boxes contain items, beehives contain bees, decorated pots contain sherds and items, etc. If you are in item mode, you will be able to add any item from your offhand, even blocks as items. It's a bit confusing, but the easiest way to show you what that means is by using a hopper. In block mode, the hopper will appear as it does when you place it in the world, versus in item mode, it will appear as a 2D item. This is because the item form of a hopper is a 2D item normally, but the block itself is 3D. Most generic blocks, like deep slate or stone, will show up the same regardless of block or item mode, since their rendering doesn't change. And finally, in text mode, it will use the custom name of the item in your offhand to add text to the world. Simply rename the item in an anvil, and when you add it in text mode, the custom name will appear in the world. Next, we have remove, which will remove the nearest unlocked display based on the mode you're in. Then we have swap, which will swap the data of the nearest unlocked display with the item you're holding in your offhand, but only if the item works for the display mode you're in. For example, if you were in item mode, you could swap a netherite sword display with an ender pearl display, or a netherite sword display with a stone display as an item. But if you were in block mode, you would not be able to swap a stone block display with a netherite sword display. This is because all blocks can be items, but not all items can be blocks. Then we have lock, which will lock the nearest unlocked display and prevent further adjustment to it, and unlock, which will unlock the nearest locked display and allow further adjustment to it. Finally, in this group, we have display, which will cause the nearest unlocked display to blink, indicating that it is the current target for adjustments. Whatever unlocked display is closest to your feet will be targeted, and if there are displays that are equal distance from you, it will select the oldest of them. Next, we have a few new options added to the utility page. The first is add/paste properties. This is the same as the add function, with the addition of also pasting the properties you have copied from the copy/paste page to the added display. This is especially useful if you want to set up default settings for a display when you add them in. Another new option we have is toggle stasis. When this is active, the nearest unlocked display will be locked to the center of your camera, and as you move your camera around, the display will move with it. To release the stasis of a display, you just need to select this toggle again. And finally, we have mass lock and mass unlock. These will lock/unlock all displays within 5 blocks. This is especially useful if you want to make sure that everything around you is locked before moving on to the next display. On the transformation page, we are met with 4 options: pivot, position, rotation, and scale. Selecting any of these will change the transformation mode, which means when you select the plus or minus options below, it will only affect the selected properties. Pivot mode allows you to adjust the pivot point of the display. When changing this, it may look like the position of the display is changing. However, the position remains the same. We can see this if we toggle F3 plus B to show hitboxes. As you can see, we have a blue line emitting from the display. And when the pivot changes, the blue line remains the same, but the render itself moves. Position allows you to adjust the position of the display. When changing this, the blue line and the render move the same amount. Rotation mode allows you to rotate the display, and scale mode allows you to resize the display. Next to the scale option is a lock icon. Selecting this will toggle whether aspect ratio should be locked for scaling or not. When the aspect ratio is locked and you scale a display, all 3 axes will scale together. If aspect ratio is unlocked, you can edit one axis at a time. Below the 4 transformation mode options are a series of plus and minus options. The plus and minus to the right of X will allow adjustments on the X axis, the ones to the right of Y will allow adjustment on the Y axis, and the ones to the right of Z will allow adjustment on the Z axis. Below that, we have a series of position increments. Selecting a position increment will change how far a display moves when you adjust its position. These increments are based on the pixels of a full block in Minecraft, which is 16 pixels wide. So selecting 16 will allow you to move a display 1 full block in a given direction, versus 0.5 will allow you to move a display half a pixel in a given direction. Below that, we have pivot and scale increments. These are all in percentages because at default, all displays have a scale of 1, and a pivot adjustment of 1 block is also equal to 1, which makes it difficult to handle it the same way as position was handled, as a button would have an equal scaling and pivot to a full block. When adjusting pivot and scale, keep in mind this adjustment is based off of its original scaling. So a 100% scale increase would make a block twice as big the first time, but then the second time and so on it will only increase by 1 additional block size. And finally, we have rotation increments. If you understand degrees of rotation, these should be pretty straightforward, but because I've seen a lot of confusion on how X, Y, and Z rotations work, I have the following example for you. As you can see, we have 3 lines, red, green, and blue. Red represents the x-axis, or left and right, green represents the y-axis, or up and down, and blue represents the z-axis, or forward and backward. When rotating on an axis, you should imagine that you are taking this line and rotating around it. An example of an x rotation is nodding your head up and down. Your head rotates along the x-axis. An example of y rotation is spinning around in a boat. The boat rotates along the y-axis. An example of z rotation is rotating an item in an item frame. The item rotates along the z-axis. Next on our list is the lighting page. The lighting page allows us to change the brightness of a display's rendering. The brightness property of a display is split into 2 properties, sky and block. Sky brightness refers to the brightness level you get from natural sky lighting, and block brightness refers to the brightness level you get from block lighting from things like torches or glowstone. When you select the modified option, it will set the brightness of the display to have the max sky and block brightness, 15. Selecting default will remove these properties and the display will take on whatever lighting is around it. Below these options are some plus and minus options for sky and block. These only function when the display has modified brightness enabled and do nothing when the display has default brightness enabled. These options use the position increment to increase or decrease the brightness. So if your position increment is set to 3 and you select the minus option for sky, then the sky brightness property will be reduced by 3. Below these, we have some more plus and minus options for shadow radius and shadow strength. These also use the position increment to increase or decrease the properties. Shadow radius determines how wide a shadow is on the ground below the display. Shadow strength determines how dark the shadow is. Beneath that are some glow options. Selecting on will enable a glowing outline on block and item displays. Selecting off will disable it. If you select a color, the outline color will change to match. If you are working with a text display, however, the text background color will change instead. Next up, we have the copy and paste page. You will notice that on the left-hand side, we have a series of categories, and to their right are a green square for copy and a green square for paste. Selecting copy on any of these categories will copy specific data based on the category. Selecting paste on any of these will paste the copied data onto your targeted display. Transform will only copy and paste the pivot, rotation, and scale, but will exclude the position. Brightness will copy and paste the sky and block brightness properties. Shadow will copy and paste the shadow radius and strength properties. Billboard will copy and paste the billboard property, which we will get into later. Glow will copy and paste the glow property color. Block state will copy and paste the block states of a block display. Text will copy and paste the text components of a text display. And all will copy and paste all of these properties at once. Copying one set of properties and then copying a different set of properties, such as transformation and brightness, will not overwrite your copy. However, if you copy the same property twice, such as transformation and transformation, it will. And finally, we have group copy and group paste. Group copy will copy all unlocked displays within 5 blocks. Group paste will paste that copy into the world. If the use up item config is set to 1, you will need all of the necessary items that make up your copy in your inventory to paste them. If you do not, it will not paste your group. Then we have the block display page. There isn't much here because block displays are very simple. Next to block state, there are 3 options to choose from: previous block state, get current block state, and next block state. A block state is a type of block data that Minecraft uses to determine how a block model should render. An example of this could be a fence post, which has north, south, east, and west block states. If the north state has a value of true, then the fence post will display as if it is connected to the north, and if it is false, it will display as if it is not connected to the north. When you select the option to get the current block state, it will output the current block state to your chat. When you select previous or next, it will also output what the new block state is. State value also has 3 options to choose from: previous value, get current value, and next value. From our previous example, if our current block state was north on a fence post, and that value was true, if we were to get the current value, it would output to our chat that the value is true. Next and previous value will change the value to the next one in the list. For true or false values, this is essentially a toggle. However, for block states that have more than just true or false, it will swap to the next or previous values in the list. A good example of this is turtle eggs, which have a block state called eggs, which can be any number between 1 and 4. It will start with 1 as the default, next would be 2, and previous would be 4. And finally, the change variant option. This option is for blocks that consist of multiple blocks and not block states. An example of this is twisting vines, which are made up of 2 different blocks, the twisting vines themselves, which are the tip of the vine, and twisting vines plant, which are the rest of the vine. Selecting change variant will swap out the blocks like this with their variant. Fire will become soul fire, twisting vines will become twisting vines plant, cauldrons will become lava cauldrons, etc. The item display page is very quick and easy to talk about. The last option listed, enchantment glint, will toggle if an item shows an enchantment glint on it or not, and the remaining options alter how the item should be rendered. For example, should it be rendered how it would if it were thrown onto the ground? Should it be rendered as if it were being held in your right hand in first person? Should it be rendered as if it were being seen by another player in the left hand? Or how it appears in an inventory slot? Text display is also pretty easy to describe if you're familiar with most text editors. Alignment will allow you to edit how the text of the text display should align if there are multiple lines, allowing you to adjust if it should align to the left, the right, or the center. Then we have a series of toggles to adjust the text. Bold will toggle if the text is bold or not, italics will toggle if the text is italicized or not, underline will toggle if the text is underlined or not, strike through will toggle if the text should have a line through it or not, obfuscated will toggle if the text should be obscured or not, see-through will toggle if this text should appear over blocks or not, similar to player name tags, and shadow will toggle if the text has a shadow behind it or not. Please note that the shadow is not the same as the brightness page's shadow. This is a shadow on the text itself. We could also change the text color by selecting one of the options listed at the bottom. The miscellaneous page has a few options to select from that don't have a dedicated page elsewhere. The first 4 options affect the billboard property. The billboard property determines how the display should face the player viewing it. Fixed means it will not rotate at all to face the player. Vertical means it will rotate on the y-axis based on how the player is looking left and right. Horizontal means it'll rotate on the x-axis based on how the player is looking up and down, and center means it'll utilize both vertical and horizontal billboarding. After that, we have 2 teleporting options. Teleport to player will move the display to where the player is standing, and align to grid will realign a display to the grid of the Minecraft world. The next 3 options are to force a display to mount a boat, minecart, or armor stand. Doing this allows you to move a display around, put them on predetermined paths, etc. And finally, dismount will force the display off of whatever it has mounted. And the very last page, the credits. This data pack was developed by me, but I also got a lot of help from a member of the Hitchhikers Community Discord server, Qubit. Thank you, Qubit, for all your help on figuring this stuff out. Last but certainly not least, we have a series of trigger commands you can use in chat to help do a few things. If you do /trigger sculptures dot, you will see a list of triggers you can use. For all of these, you will need to do /trigger sculptures dot, whatever the trigger name is, set, and then the number value you'd like to set it to. For example, if I wanted to set the block brightness of a display to 8, I could do /trigger sculptures dot block underscore brightness set 8 to do so. For the glow underscore color trigger, the number needs to be generated from an RGBA value. In the lighting page of the sculptures book, select glow and open the link. It will take you to a website where you can put in red, green, blue, and alpha values to get a number value. You can also put in an RGBA value if you prefer. When you do so, copy the int value generated. This will be the number you need to set the trigger to. Line width determines how wide a text display can be. Text opacity determines how opaque or transparent a text display can be. And for sculptures.trigger, if you manually put in a number from the book, it will activate as if you used the book to do so. For example, in version 5, toggle stasis is 211. If I used a lectern to toggle stasis, I could not open the book again unless I had it in my hand or was still looking at the lectern. But I could trigger the same number again to activate the toggle by doing /trigger sculptures.trigger set 211. If you are in block mode, you can add seeds and crops to generate block versions of their plant. And if you add a fire charge, you can generate a block of fire. There are also several blocks that you can change the variant of, such as pistons to piston heads, sticky pistons to sticky piston heads. Cauldrons have 4 variants, starting from the empty cauldron to the water cauldron to the powdered snow cauldron to the lava cauldron. Dirt has 3 variants, from dirt to path block to farmland. Fire can be changed into soul fire. Grass, seagrass, and ferns can all be turned into their tall variant, and other plants such as glowberries, weeping vines, twisting vines, chorus flowers, and big drip leaf can all be changed into their plant variant. But there are several blocks that cannot be turned into a block display, such as decorated pots, beehives and bee nest, signs and hanging signs, all banners, and shulker boxes. But while banners cannot be placed as a block display, you can add them as an item display and they will keep all of their data. But that is going to do it. I know it was a lot of information, but I believe that I have covered it all. Thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Have a good one.